Thanks for being here with us.
Oh, glad that you guys are having me.
Yeah,
It's rare that I get a chance to talk about any of this stuff.
right. So,
Well, we're happy to have you.
yeah, you had some weird, strange things happen to you. Where did these things occur?
Oh, well, I mean, when I was younger, I had some paranormal experiences, particularly when I was around 10 years old. Um, and actually, the first time that happened, my mom was with me, so she was there to witness it with me. Just things like that. I mean, if you want me to go into detail about each story, I could keep you guys all night talking about this stuff. But uh, that was just a incident that happened when I was 10 years old. It was in DC. I grew up. I'm pretty much a city boy. I grew up in the city, but we were always kind of like the odd family. We always had tons of animals, dogs, cats. I've always had a close bond towards animals. That's what I do now. I'm a pet sitter by trade. I'm in my retirement years, and it's kind of a laid back thing to do. You know what I mean? It's not too stressful or anything like that. Um, but yeah, I've always had this close kinship with animals. I've been stalked by crows. There was one time back in I believe it was 1998. I was coming out of movie theater. It was a late night showing. I remember at the Uptown Theater in DC. And I remember it was Memorial Day, and it was that Sunday evening. Memorial Day was Memorial Monday the next day. Memorial Day has an interesting thing with a lot of my stories because I had a Sasquatch sighting. That was also on Memorial Day many years later. But after I left the theater, I went through the Adams Morgan area of Washington, D.C. I did a lot of music in my younger days, and also worked the clubs around there doing doorman, all kinds of stuff in the DC area. So I knew a lot of the club owners, and I remember I bumped into one guy, and his bar just closed. He was just locking the place up, and he invited me to come over here to his apartment and hang out with him for a few hours. So I did, chilled out. We talked for a while, and I remember I didn't have a car with me that night, so I was going to rely on public transportation to get home in the morning. So basically, fell asleep. It was around maybe about 5 in the morning. I was thinking, okay, well, the metro opens up again in a couple hours. Let me go down to pay my respects down at the Vietnam Memorial down on the mall. So sun's starting to come up, and I'm walking down there, and I'd say about a mile before I get to the mall, these three crows just show up, and one just lands right by me, and he's just talking, just facing me, just carrying a conversation on and everything. And I'm like, I'm a little nervous. And I'm checking these three out, and there was one main one, like the boss. He's following me, and the two other ones are just flying around. And finally, as I approach the Vietnam Memorial, there's vendors down there, and they're setting up and everything, getting ready for the day. And I'm like, great, there's these people. They can see these three crows acting like this, you know what I mean? And the next thing you know, I turn around and the crows are all flying, you know what I mean? It's just, I have these unusual animal experiences. I had one actually Saturday while I was pet sitting in Brandywine, Maryland. This house deep in the woods. You had to go up a dirt road, and it was all by itself, surrounded by woods. I guess there was a vineyard on one side, and then kind of like a farmhouse on the other side. Two creeks in the back. And at one point in the evening, I look out the window and I see maybe about 2.5 foot vulture. He's right on the deck, and he's peeking in the window just where I was sitting just a little while before. So he's peeking at me where I was, but I'm looking out another window peeking at him. I mean, that was just when you just get up, go to the bathroom, just sort of look out the window, see what's going on. That's pretty much a shocking sight to see close up. Anyway, let me let this truck pass. But I've had all these unusual experiences all my life. but at the same time, this probably comes from my father's side. Yeah, he's Native American, Rappahannock and African American mix, and my mom's German. Very interesting combination. But anyway, all these experiences, after a while, as I got older, I've always been practical. You know what I mean? Amongst my friends growing up, anything I get involved with, I'm always the practical one. People always rely on me to come up with a practical answer for things. So a lot of this paranormal stuff and everything, I kind of, after a while, I kind of brushed aside and say, nah, there's got to be something to it. Someone's playing with me. It's my imagination. It's just fooling with me. This is just, and the older I got in my years, from the experiences that happened to me when I was younger, and then growing up, by the time I got my 30s or 40s, 50s, I was, starting to dismiss a lot of stuff. This is all just garbage. You know what I mean? And during that period, wasn't a whole lot happening. I remember I was once in an old building, and I remember something touching my face because people were telling me that this place was haunted. And I remember like I said, I've been involved with music and everything, and I was, running this place kind of as a rehearsal studio for a while, and a lot of strange things were going on there. But we go with a lot of noise. You mind? I'm going to try to move around to avoid this noise if you don't mind. How you doing? That's all right. Okay. All right, Missy. Okay, now I got another dog on me. Okay. You guys still with me?
Yeah, we're
Can
here.
you hear me?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay. I'm
Yeah, we got you.
gonna go down to a place where it's quiet, but it's inside, and I don't get signals here, but we'll try it. Okay. Now I'm with 4 cats in a
Okay.
basement, surrounded by animals. Always been like that. Um, anyway, I'm very much a skeptic on most things. I really am. Um, but for some reason, and you guys, you got a cryptozoology show, and you know how it is. Around 2008, I remember an article came up. Now, don't get me wrong, the subject of Bigfoot, it's always been intriguing to me. And I've always had a deep connection to the woods, when being a city boy, I'd go to Rock Creek Park, spend my whole day there. Whenever I could get out to the burbs, I'd go to the edge of suburbia, hang out as much as I could in the woods when I was a kid. Always attracted to that. But like I said, as I got older, I just became very dismissive of a lot of these things. And even I was born a Christian, but even the idea of God, I was like, okay, well, it's invisible. Where is God? Prove to me that there's a God. I started questioning a lot of things. You get like that. And I guess, like I said, around 2008, I remember there was an article in Washington City paper about a guy saw a Sasquatch in Culpeper, Virginia, which is maybe about 50, 60 miles south of DC. And I was like, whoa, that's very close. You know what I mean? Somebody seeing something like that around here. Now, I've been out to the Northwest. I've been up to the Cascade Mountains. I used to tour in bands around the Seattle area, Port Angeles, Washington. I was up there for about 2 months, right next to the Olympic Mountains. And I was always out in the woods up there. The first time I ever saw an eagle close up was up in the Olympic Mountains. And, the idea of Sasquatch and everything was always in the back of my mind, but it wasn't, really, something that I would dwell on, you know what I'm saying? But in 2008, things started changing. First off, I got my first computer. And then I don't know, you guys probably know about this person, Rick Dyer. Remember him? Rick Dyer.
Yeah, I've heard his name before. Yeah.
Right. He was a big hoaxer. He hoaxed. He hoaxed a dead Bigfoot in a freezer in 2008, and then he did again in 2013. And I'm surprised how many people were suckered by this guy. But I remember that the first time that came out, it was on Fox News, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this guy in Georgia, him and his buddy, they claim they shot a Bigfoot and they got it in the freezer and everything." And I remember looking at it, I'm like, "Oh, that's a costume in ice." It was so cheesy looking. It was fake. And as it turned out, about 2 weeks later, it became a fake, but it made national news. So, like I said, around that time, I got my first computer. So the thought came to me, well, gee, everyone has a phone camera nowadays. If there is such a thing as Bigfoot, there's got to be some kind of footage or evidence by now, because everyone that walks out, well, everyone that, anything you see nowadays, you can pick up, just reach in your pocket, pull out your phone and document it. So I'm like, there's got to be something out there. So, I went online, I'm new to the internet, and I searched, and it was like, I mean, of course, you have like the Freeman footage. That was quite interesting. And the Patterson, I've always been on the, kind of like on the fence about that footage. It's gotten better, and there's a lot of things in detail, with Bill Mums. That's the guy. He came out with some nice stuff. But anyway, around that time, I just started looking, and I couldn't really find anything. But at the same time, there was an article in Washington City paper. Like I said, the guy saw one down in Culpeper, Virginia, and I thought that was very close. So I contacted that guy, and his name was Bill DeJanis. He's passed away, but he was very open about it. And he contacted me back, and he told me about his sighting down there in Culpeper. And we kept in touch. And when anything I saw on the internet that looked interesting, I'd send it to him, and he'd tell me what he'd think about it and everything. And so all of a sudden, I just got totally involved in this subject, basically to really get some type of understanding of it. You know what I mean? Like, okay, it makes no sense to me. Like, I listened to your show the other day with Dr. Meldrum. To me, when you look at it really scientifically, it makes no sense that you have, okay, some 8-foot relic hominoid, or, ape man running around in the woods of North America, close to urban areas. Yeah, and no one, we still don't even have a body. You got all these thousands of trail cams everywhere, hundreds of thousands of trail cams everywhere, and no one has a real good picture. I mean, just at that point, I was like, this basically, I lost kind of faith in the subject, but at the same time, I was still intrigued. So around that time, I was also dog walking around the Capitol Hill area, and during my dog walks, I'd listen to podcasts like this show right here. And there were several around at the time. There was the Bigfoot Tonight show with Stacy Hotstetler, and the guy passed away. He was a Marylander too. And several other shows. So I heard this one show, Minnesota Bigfoot Hour, or something like that. And this guy, Abe Del Rio, he was the host of it. He had this guy on named Kenneth Jahosky, and he lived in the DC area, and he mentioned how he was researching in the area. And, I was listening to the show, and he was a pretty smart guy. He had a degree from Mellon University in anthropology, and biology. He might have had one in anthropology, I'm not sure. And he was also a librarian over in NIH, for the government. And I was like, whoa, those some pretty good credentials. And he was telling me about his research in Maryland, not too far from the DC area. So I, he had a Facebook page, talked about it on the show. So I contacted him, and he was very open. He said, sure, come on out, hang out in the woods. let me show you my research area. So we met, probably about a week later, and he took me out to this area. Now I was thinking that, I ended up catching the subway. He picked me up at the last stop, and I thought it would be further out in Maryland, up around the Frederick area, closer to the mountains. But no, this was just maybe we drove maybe about a half hour, maybe 40 minutes. There's this area that's right on the edge of suburbia. Okay, and went around there, checked it out, and it was interesting. As soon as we parked and we walked past where the houses and the road, everything is, it went past the fire break. You can feel it right away, like something watching you. And so, we basically hung out, checked out the woods. He showed me odd stick structures, things like that, and I'm like, okay, nothing that really was convincing. But like I said, the whole time you feel like you're being watched. Just eyes are upon you. So we hung out. Evening came. We left when it got dark. Got together. But at the same time, at that point, being that I'm always going out in the woods on my own, I was starting, anytime I'd be invited to a picnic or something like that, if I get bored, I'd start walking the tree line. You know what I mean? Just start walk. And then I started noticing things myself out there, the stick structures, the breaks and things like that at various places. And these are not, I'm not talking about deep in the woods. I'm talking about these little patches of woods that are in suburbia or right on the edge of suburbia. And being a musician, I like to take instruments with me sometimes when I go. I have a couple Native American flutes. And one time over by College Park, there's a couple creeks that run by there. It's a little wooded areas. Are you guys folks familiar with College Park, Maryland?
Maryland? I'm not sure.
Yeah, College Park. It's probably about 5 miles northeast of Washington, D.C., where University of Maryland is. Anyway, there's like several creeks that run around that area. And, it's suburbia, it's homes, shopping malls. Like I said, you got the University of Maryland there, and you got lots of little parks. One thing I say about DC, a lot of people don't understand, it's a very, very green city. Greenest city, major city I've ever been to. There's just like, because it's the nation's capital and there's all these monuments, you have a lot of parks and a lot of greenways around there, and all these creeks that all connect to the Chesapeake Bay, which, Chesapeake Bay is one of the largest, I think it's the second largest bay in the United States, in the southern 48 anyway. But anyway, so I remember being back there in College Park, and I'm playing my flute in the woods. Okay, and this is probably the first kind of paranormal experience I had in quite some time. And, this was in the last, I'd say about 12 years. And I'm playing flute and little sand back there. I'm there for a while, and I also make, rock stacks. So you guys are familiar with rock stack herns? Right. Made one of those, real beautiful one, had found some real nice rocks, not just the flat stones, but even curved stones, kind of round stones. So it was really, really nice. I dripped the water on it, made it shiny, took a picture of it, and I'm hanging out there. And actually, I saw some kids that were kind of wading through the stream earlier, some hippie kids, kind of talked to them for a while. They heard my native flute playing. They liked it, complimented me. And I'm there, and sun's starting to go down. So I'm kind of just, relaxing. And all of a sudden, I hear, it almost sounds like grunted Native American, like these words, "Hiwa," like that, but real deep and grunted. And it just startled me. And I turn around and I look. And I'm looking, and I'm like walking up and down the bank because I'm thinking someone's messing with me. You know what I mean? Nobody out there. So the thought comes to me, whoa, Mark, man, you just evoked the Native American spirit. And, and all of a sudden, when I thought about it, I got this overwhelming sense of fear and just grabbed up all my stuff and got out of there as quickly as I could. And that was, I mean, it was because I could hear people in the distance, like there's a blacktop maybe on the other side of the trees, maybe about 200 yards. So all throughout the day and when it started getting dusk, I can hear people in the distance talking, but that was something directly behind me that was, like I said, it sounded just like grunted Native American. And that was probably like about 12 years ago. But I'm quite sure I know what I heard. That was the first. Since then, are you guys ever familiar with the word tagging or hitchhiking? The hitchhiker's effect. Like I was checking out a researcher. He passed away by the name of Scott Carpenter. You guys know about him? Right. He mentioned that. And I noticed at that point, it seemed like just things that are happening. It's like going down that rabbit hole. Okay. Back to my friend Kenneth Jahowski, who told me about his spot. We would continue to go out to this one spot. And each time I would go out there, I would notice things happening. Like, are you familiar with a piece of equipment, Zoom video cameras, Zoom Q3? Okay. I took one of those out there. I use it mostly for recording bands and everything because I do a lot of sound audio work too. But I took that out there and, just, oh, wow, I'm going out with a real researcher, be just like the guys on Finding Bigfoot. That's where my mind was set back at that time. This was like around, I guess, 2013, 2014. But I'm going out there with him with that Zoom camera. And at one point, I remember we leaned up against a log and decided to walk down a trail. So I leaned it up and I faced it towards the area where we were planning on doing an overnight. We're planning on, this was going to be our first overnight in these woods. And as we're walking away, you can hear us talking in our footsteps. But at the same time, you start hearing like a tap, like a woodpecker tapping on the side of it. Tap, 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 tap. Okay. So all of a sudden, maybe about 20 minutes later, walking back, it picks that up and the tapping stops. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is when we listen to it afterwards. Right there, I was like, whoa, you hear that? I mean, it sounded like a woodpecker landed right next to the camera, started pecking at it for the whole time while we're walking away for a half hour up until the time he came back. That's the kind of sound I heard on it. That was very odd. Then we started having things like tree breaks right in front of us. We'd be walking, doing some bushwhacking in the woods. There'd be a young tree, maybe about 20 feet tall, still green, no wind, snap right in front of us. The whole time he's saying Bigfoot, Bigfoot. I'm like, I don't see no Bigfoot. You know what I mean? What's tapping my phone camera? I didn't see no Bigfoot. I heard it. Okay. So we finally do an overnight. Okay. A friend drops us off. We didn't, it's an area where, no camping at night or anything like that. It's a state park, maybe about 30 miles northwest of Washington, D.C. So we had to kind of sneak in there overnight. And a buddy drops him off and he walks his buddy to the car. And on the way back, he told me that he saw a figure jumping to a bush. I was like, that's interesting. I said, did you get a good look at it? It's like, nah, just look. I saw what looked like a figure and it just stepped quickly behind a bush. I'm like, really? Okay. So we kind of hang out at this little spot, our little spot, log there. I set up a little small tent just in case it started raining. Actually, it started drizzling just a little bit, but not much. We kind of sat that out. But we're sitting on a log and he's kind of looking one way as it's getting dark. And I'm looking another, and you can hear in the distance farm animals and things like that. And something about the air, I noticed something very kind of electrified feeling about the air. I don't know what it was, But I look over and I just see these two lights just kind of playing back and forth. And then they go up and do a figure eight. They're across, we're sitting on a ridge. Then there's a little part where there's a little gully down there and then goes up to another ridge. It's like halfway up the other ridge. We see these lights, maybe about 60, 70 yards away. And they're just like dancing in the trees, two lights. Just go up, they'll shoot up maybe 20 feet, come back down. Two of them in unison, but almost like eyes, but moving like that. And we're watching that for about a good 10 minutes. And I'm like, that's pretty interesting, isn't it, Kenny? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, I wonder what's behind us. So we look behind us because by that time we're starting to hear all kinds of sounds around us and everything. And we turn around and look, then look back towards where we saw the lights. Lights are gone. But we hear all kinds of noise, and I couldn't say that not all of it wasn't whitetail because I know what whitetail sounds like, and I heard a lot of that out there too. But that was the first time I ever seen orbs in the woods. I heard about them, and the first time I heard about them, actually, I was a kid in the 1970s, and someone told me around Dickerson's Quarry, people were seeing these ghost lights, and that's Montgomery County, same area where I saw these lights. So. But that was the very first time. And at that point, orbs have just been part of my life. It's interesting. They just, about a year later, I did a solo mountain bike trip up to, from Washington, D.C. to Cumberland, straight up to C&O Canal, Topaz. That's part of the national parks. It took me a week to go up there and back, and I camped along the way, and I was out in real deep backcountry. And this was like really the first time I've ever been in a tent deep in the woods by myself, So that was like 2015. So I remember when I did that in the deep part of the backcountry, nothing. Didn't experience anything weird. Cumberland, nothing really weird. When I got back to Montgomery County towards Washington, D.C., I started feeling that electricity in the air again for some reason. I guess, you folks are familiar with Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. Yeah, following along the Potomac River. From Harper's Ferry down to like North Montgomery County, I would feel that kind of just that feeling of electricity in the air for some reason around that area. I don't know why, but okay, I as I'm pedaling towards Washington, D.C. on my last day, it's evening time. I'm coming down the C&O Canal. And this is the first time the whole trip I'm out there that something odd happened to me. I'm coming down and I notice, when you're coming closer to a big city after being that deep in the country on a bicycle, you start to hear cars. After not hearing cars for days, you can start to hear traffic in the distance. And I remember pedaling and hearing that traffic in the distance. And by that time, it's pitch black and I'm pedaling on the towpath. And I hear a barred owl. And I hear barred owls all the time, particularly out in the woods. Sometimes you hear them in a group and the sound of it can almost go through you. I'm sure you folks heard that before. Okay. This barred owl sounded like it was like 5 feet away and 5 feet tall. I mean, it just, that whoo, 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 real loud and blaring. I mean, it freaked me out when I heard it. And I kind of slowed down and did a semi U-turn. And I looked in about 50 yards into the woods, looking towards the river. There it was again, orbs, 2 of them. But this time they were like just doing, like circling within each other. Almost like, people describe them as a vortex. And I'm looking at that. And I'm like, Mark, you got to pull out your phone, get a picture. You got to get a phone, pull out video. And then I'm thinking about the sound of that owl and how close it was. And then I'm in pitch black darkness. I just started pedaling down that bicycle as fast as I could and get away from it. For some reason, it was a little bit, I wish I hung out and got that on video, but I just lost my nerve and felt like the best thing for me to do is exit the area. That's unfortunate. I did catch an orb on Cameron, Pennsylvania. That was in an old church. But I had my phone out, and the orb was there right when it appeared. Bam! I was like, "Wow, I got it." But since then, like I said, it's just been I. The last time was maybe about 2 years ago. But like I told you guys before, I'm very dismissive on a lot of this stuff, and I'm like, Mark, it's imagination. You're fooling yourself. You're kidding yourself. You didn't see that. It was something else. You misidentified it. I'm constantly doing that all the time. Okay. Well, I told you, I do music and audio, play music on music venue. I was volunteering at running sound, and a lot of times after the bands would play, stop around midnight or so, I closed the place down. Since there are a couple sofas there, sometimes I'd be so tired, I would just stretch out on the sofa and crash there. I did that for years. Probably crashed there more nights than I crashed anywhere else. I remember there was a 7-Eleven across the street. I remember one time I went over to the 7-Eleven. Okay, maybe about 2 in the morning, grabbed something to eat, came back over to the place, and I noticed I saw three green lights on the wall, blinking. And I'm thinking it's a piece of musical equipment that didn't get cut off or something. It's the reflection of some LED lights or something. But I'm like, wait a minute, there's no equipment over there. And I'm looking around and the lights are, like I said, they're about finger size. They're three green lights, just like that, spread out apart. Not like, spread like my fingers, but just three lights together. And they're flashing on the wall. And I'm like, I'm checking it out, looking up and down, feeling it, looking, trying to figure out what's causing those lights. Finally, just like the time when I saw the orb, the very first time, watching it for 10 minutes, finally I ignored it, walked in the other room, started doing stuff. Came back a little while later, it was gone. But there's something about three. You remember I mentioned the three crows earlier in my life? Okay. Three knocks, I'll hear that in the woods. Bap, bap, bap. I hear that in the woods sometimes. So one time I was in the storage unit. I was in there. It flooded in the unit because I was renting a unit on the top floor, and one night the roof flooded, and a whole bunch of my stuff got damaged. So the storage unit, they allowed me to move my stuff into another unit down the hall. So I'd be there late at night sometimes, going through wet stuff. A lot of stuff I had to throw away. I remember in the storage unit one night, when I'd make noise, I'd hear down the hall, something banging on the mellow. And at that point, I thought it was a person living in their unit. You know what I mean? So I'd say, hey, I'll be out of here in about 5 minutes. Sorry, I'm keeping you up. I'd put my stuff away and leave. Every night, bap, bap, bap. This went on for about a week. Okay, then one day I go in there in the middle of the afternoon. The place is loaded with a bunch of other people, loading furniture in and out of it. So I go up to the fourth floor again, go to my unit, started doing some things. There it is. At that point, I got mad. I said, hey, it's in the middle of the afternoon. If you want to sleep, go someplace else. Never a word back, just three knocks. So a few nights later, I'm in there doing some stuff. I had some conga drums, I remember, because some of my drums got messed up. You know how like native drums and animal skin drums, if they get wet, that's rawhide. So if they're like tuned real tight, that will pop if it gets wet. So I was going through a lot of stuff like that. I remember on the last night, I was checking drums. And sure enough, as soon as I start making a little noise, bap, 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 three knocks again. So at that point, I started playing three knocks back on the drum, and we're having a little thing back and forth with the three knocks. So I put all my stuff in my unit. And at that point, I log it up. It's about 10 o'clock. I walk up and down the hall, and I check every unit. Every single one of them was locked. I never heard the three knocks again after that. It was weird.
Yeah,
I mean,
really interesting and weird for sure.
I'm sorry.
Did you say you had a Bigfoot encounter?
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. Like I said, I would like to be more detailed about some of this paranormal stuff, but the Bigfoot counter. Let me tell you about that. Okay, you remember the flute thing, the making of cairns, rock stacks, and all that. Um, okay, Memorial Day. I mentioned that before. Things happen on Memorial Days. I have a lot of weird animal run-ins on Memorial Day. This Bigfoot happened about 2016. Okay, I remember I mentioned the C&O Canal. Okay, this day I went out just to kind of go out and enjoy Memorial Day, ride along the canal, enjoy nature and the beautiful weather. So I'm riding the canal, and maybe about I get outside DC, past DC city limits, out in the Maryland, and I notice I go over to like a place where a lot of people do fishing. I noticed there was a heavy fish smell in the air that day, particularly by some rapids where people like to do fishing. So when I play flute or any kind of music or instrument, I get very self cautious. So I don't like people listening. I don't want no one to hear me. So I'm riding along looking for a little path or something I can go someplace to be away from people, so no one can hear me or anything like that. And maybe about a few miles outside the city, I go down a little path, kind of runs along a stream, and there's a nice log there where I can sit and relax. So I go there, park my bike there, and I chill out there for maybe. And like the time before, when I heard the grunted Native American, I was there for quite a few hours after I made the rock stack and kind of hung out for a little while. Same thing happened here. Okay, I hung out there for maybe about good 3 4 hours, made a rock stack, played flute. At one point, when I made the rock stack, I did the same thing. I poured water over it, took some pictures. Um, After sun started to kind of go behind the trees a little bit. After I made the art, now this might kind of sound weird, but and I've heard other Bigfoot. Are you folks familiar with Arla Williams or Greg Yost?
Yeah, I know who Greg Yost is.
Right. Yeah. I spoke. Actually, we met one time and talked a little while. Speak openly to the woods. Talk to the woods like you're talking. Like we're talking. One on one right now. Um, that particular day, I did that. After I made the rock stack, I spoke in English. I said, "Thank you very much for allowing me to share my art." I said that to the woods, facing the woods. Okay. After that, I also said these words here. Now I heard this a long time ago. I don't know if what dialect this comes from. I heard it's ancient Cherokee. Someone else told me it's ancient Lakota. But I said these words. I said Momo si Apicha Nakawashi. Now I've said these words before, and I'd hear tree snaps off in the distance. This particular time, right after I thanked the woods in English and said those words, Apicha Nakawashi, I continued to play flute. Now, I'm out in the woods playing flute a lot. You know what I mean? No biggie. I see animals in the distance watching me. Okay, this time I start playing flute and I look over, and across the creek, maybe about 80 yards, I see kind of a reddish orange, cinnamon colored thing pop up from behind the wood pile and then pop back down. For some reason, it didn't, it's like, okay, that's not a deer, but it didn't. Bigfoot was the last thing on my mind. That was the last thing on my mind. So I'm kind of looking that direction and I'm playing some more. And I see the head kind of pop up, whatever it is, they're spying on me. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking that, and okay, you know what I mean? And okay. And it's, how when you're down by a river, how You have a lot of branches that build up, deadfall, and everything, and you have these huge piles of wood down by rivers. That's what was down. It was like between the C&O Canal and the Potomac River. And this area, even though it's very close to DC, it's very dense and swamp like back there. Very. And so I'm playing flute. And after a while, I see the head peek up again. I'm like, oh, what is that over there? And after 4 minutes, it stands up from the waist up. And I look at it. I'm like, first thing that comes to my mind is someone over there spying on me. You know what I mean? Like, which is kind of weird, you know what I mean, from a distance. So I look at it, and then it kind of leans forward, like it sticks its chest towards me, pulls back, and I see the arms. When I saw the arms, I shuddered. I mean, it just made me shake. And the first thing that came out of my mind, is there goes one of them things right now. After always wanting to see one, you know what I mean, being out in the woods with Kenny and everything, bam, there it was. And the weirdest thing about it, it's like it wanted me to see it. It looked at me and then moved to its right and was out of sight. It was weird. And the first thing I did was I gathered up my stuff and went over there. I had to try to investigate. I was in shorts, gym shorts at the time, and I looked at the terrain. I was like, I can't, because it's just, I could not walk to that terrain. I tried to do it. And I was like, okay, put on some long pants and boots and come back tomorrow. I went back the next day. I found the print. I just found a lot of things, weird things, like right where the path where I cut in the kind of bushwhack to get to the spot, there was a big weird white and black feather placed right there. So I picked it up, kept it with me. As soon as I get back to my place, feathers start appearing. Okay. Feathers start appearing everywhere. It was like, and this is in a major city. Okay. Now, could I kick it off with what makes me see that I would dismiss too? I'm like, okay, Mark, you just saw a homeless person or something. They might have been cinnamon colored. They might have had long, hairy looking arms. I don't know. But that was your imagination playing with you. That's your mind playing with you. Okay. That's going through my head, all this stuff. Then one night, okay, that venue I'm at, where I do the volunteering music and audio, where I crashed, where I told you I saw the 3 lights flashing on the wall. I'm in the back room. I'm talking to another researcher, actually a guy by the name of Dave Thundercloud. We're sending messages over the phone. It's about 2 a.m. It's raining. I'm in the back room. All of a sudden, I hear rock clacking. Same kind of rock clacking I hear in the woods. But this is in an alley behind the place where I'm at. This is in the city. Okay, I hear rock clacking. So I looked that direction. As soon as I looked that direction, I hear buzzing sound and I look up. And an orb about 9 inches in diameter appears just like that, about 7 feet right above me, and just disappears. And at that point, excuse my language, every fucking thing I've experienced is real. I mean, at that point, that was the kicker. That made me realize that, hey, there's something going on here. And it's, I don't think, like Native Americans said, this is a Bigfoot is a being that can walk through 2 worlds. Okay. As much as I respect science and everything, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, I don't think there's ever going to be any kind of answer to this subject. Really, there's not going to be any answers. I mean, from what I've seen, it's just paranormal. I mean, how can something that I see in the woods follow me back home to the city and go through walls and appear? I mean, it's just, and then that's not my last orb experience. I've had other ones out further out, like I said, in Montgomery County, house sitting places deep in the woods. I'll look out in the balconies. they disappear. I really think, the idea of some relic hominoid, undiscovered, gigantopithecus descendant running around in these woods out here, and we have not been able to get one, capture one, no body, nothing really, nothing really on trail cam. This subject is paranormal. Sorry. All these things are related. These things, that's what I mean, UFOs, whatever. They're all kind of connected somehow. I don't know what it is. I don't have no answers. I don't think anyone will have answers. I look at these websites on Facebook. One guy calls himself Bigfoot expert. That's a joke. There are no experts in the subject. You know what I mean? Nobody knows anything.
Yeah,
And
somebody knows there's somebody that knows something somewhere, at least in the government, we feel like. But yeah, you're
you
right.
would
We
think that. You would think,
yeah.
but who? I mean, and how? One thing like Greg Yost mentioned. You know, maybe you haven't seen Bigfoot because Bigfoot don't want you to see him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's some people he does. Like when my sighting, this thing looked at me like, yeah, that's what you're looking at. It looked at me like that, very matter of fact, like, yeah, I'm what you're looking at, and then walked off. I was like, damn, it's mind blowing. It was just like that.
Were you able to see any details of the creature, Mark? I know you said it was. Were you able
It
to
was
see any?
it was cinnamon color, reddish color. That's the first thing I noticed when I saw the whatever it was peeking at me from the head. I saw it peeking, then duck back down and peeking. I noticed that it was cinnamon color. I was like, well, that's odd. I do see things. I've been out in the woods before, and I would see, cinnamon color flashes that would go behind a tree. I've seen that before. But being the skeptic, I'll be, it's some kind of red fox. I don't know how it looked that high, but it's a red fox or something, you know what I mean? Or it's something else red out there that I just can't identify. But, it was that same kind of the Irish setter type color. You know what I mean? It was that. And other than really, it was okay. One thing I will say, it wasn't like big and bulky. It was lean and muscular. Okay. I don't want to sound kind of, make any kind of derogatory, like an NBA player. You remember Kevin Garnett?
Mhm.
Okay. It was kind of built like that with long arms, just lean and muscular, but not bulky. And I don't know if it was particularly super tall, maybe between 6 and 7. And like I said, it just kind of leaned forward, looked at me a little bit, moved its arms. When I saw the arms, that's when I shuddered. And then it just quickly moved to its right and was out of sight. And just that terrain, there were no paths back there, anything like that. No trails. I went back there. It's all high grass. Just like a dry river bed. You know what I mean? Just you got to watch your step where you're going. You can step into one place, there could be copperheads in there. You know what I mean? So I mean, it was just a weird area where I saw this sighting. And oh yeah, I took a friend of mine who was when I told the story. I took a friend of mine to that spot 2 weeks later, and they had a mind speak incident right there at that same spot. And the weird thing about that is when they had that mind speak experience, I heard a crack. And when I heard a crack, it felt just like someone rubbing their feet in a heavy carpet and touching the static electricity type crack feeling. That's exact same feeling. And my friend, Roland, they told me, I was like, what did you hear? They're like, we're over here. And so what we went over to that area, then she says, I don't feel it anymore. I don't feel it anymore. But she said she heard that in her head. And exactly right when she heard that, I heard crack. Ow. What the hell? And she got real excited, started jumping up and down. I was like, did you hear that? Did you hear that? I was like, I heard a crack and I felt it, but I didn't hear it. Yeah, they said, we're right over here. I'm like, okay. So it's a weird thing. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I wish I could make heads or tails of it. Like I said, maybe the government does know something, but right now I can only everything I've experienced out in the field dealing with this subject has a paranormal feel to it. Maybe it's because I've had paranormal experience in the past and I'm more receptive to that type of thing. I don't know. Um, there's another thing, when I had my sighting, it happened to me when I least expected. I mean, I've been out in the woods looking. You know what I mean? I've been, like I said, Northwest. I've been to Bluff Creek. I've been to Bluff Creek. I've been to Mount Rainier. I camped. No, I'm sorry. I've camped on Mount Shasta 3 days solo. Um, let me see where else. I've been to Provo Canyon, Utah. I've been to Great Smoky Mountains. Did some solo camping there. Um, this thing that happened right outside D.C. happened when I least expected it. And amazing thing to me is that it happened right outside a major city. And the more I research it, I mean, Mount Vernon Monster, that's a few miles south of DC. There was back in the 1970s, a big thing going on there. I don't know if you guys, was it Sykesville Monster? You ever heard that one? That's a town between Baltimore and DC. Back in the 70s, a big thing there. The researcher John Green, I believe his name was, he mentioned Maryland as being a hotspot at one time. From what I've seen, I mean, it's ridiculous. And when you think about how the Chesapeake Bay is and all the little creeks and run-ins from it, I mean, it's a very waterlogged state with swamps and everything around here. It's amazing what I sometimes.
Yeah, I was looking on a map here, Mark. And yeah, when you get outside of Washington D.C., it's just pretty wooded everywhere, and you're kind of on the. If you go, to the west, you're kind of on the edge of the Appalachian Mountains, and you're close to the Shenandoah National Park as well. So a lot of people
Oh
don't
yeah.
think about that, but you're heavily wooded out around Washington D.C. And like you said, to the east, there's waterways and all kinds of still wooded areas. Probably a lot of people don't go, and these things it could exist.
Um, at this point, okay. I've also did some time in if you got the Appalachian mountain range, I actually lived out there last year about this time for a few months up in the mountains. I just, like I said, these things are hiding in plain sight. You know, my buddy Kenny, when we would go to this one area, this is a very small area, he thinks that, okay, he thinks that they're a relic hominoid, that they live in some type of cave system. There's no cave system around there. I mean, where do these things come from and where do they go? That's my question. Where in these areas, right on the edge of suburbia, it just makes no sense to me. That's my experience. You know what I mean? Like I said, I've also been in the backcountry, but the odd encounters I have been right there on the edges of suburbia, or even my sighting. That was basically in suburbia, right on the edges of a major city. But even though the area is heavily wooded, I mean, but when I talked to a matter of fact, right after I had the sighting, I talked to a DC cop. And you know what he told me? He looked at me, he listened to my story really intently. And he said, have you ever believed in such things before? I'm like, well, I'd like to. I'm kind of on the fence, but I guess I do now. And he's like, oh, you do now? Okay. And the way he did, it's like they know. I've talked to other cops. Cops, they work sometimes, they work odd hours. They work in, you know, dark places. They know these stories, you know what I mean? And I talked to a number of cops that are like, I've had one close to me before. I know. You know what I mean? They'll tell you stuff, but they don't like it. But if you if you develop a good rapport with them, they'll tell you their stories. I'm sure you guys have had a few cops tell you some stories. And they,
Oh yeah.
like I said, talked to a few of them, and they were not surprised. Even where I told them it happened at, in the close proximity was to a major city, they're like, "Yeah, well, that's a very good area too." And I'm like, it is. You know, anytime you have all these creeks and rivers, they all come from the mountains, they all run through these cities. You know what I mean? And there's wooded areas that run all along. It's just the way I look at it. I think, any area where you have a large amount of water, a lot of trees, you can have a possibility of having these things. It could be, just right, right on the city edge. Right in your parks.
Yeah, a
And,
lot of these.
and
Oh, sorry.
people do see them in LA. They see them right now, Angeles National Forest.
Yeah, one of my theories, I think, is these creatures are curious about us, and they're starting to come more to the. They're populating probably more, but they're also stretching out more into the suburbia areas. They can get a look at us. They can check us out. They can see what we're doing. I'm sure they're more amazed with us than we probably are of them and our technology. They probably look at us as some alien. What are these
But you
little?
also got to
What?
remember, these areas, these suburban, urban areas were rural first. Okay, it's like like that little cartoon where the bear's watching. He's in the woods. Next thing you know, he sees the shopping center come. Next thing you know, the houses are there, and then the roads. And then a woman goes, "Eek, a bear!" And the bear's like, "Well, I've been here all the time." You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
you hit the nail on the head with that.
yeah.
They've been here before
It's
we got here, and
yeah.
we're
There's a story, a great Bigfoot story, Arundel Mills Mall. That was built in early 2000s, and some contractors, when they laid out the area, they camped overnight, and there was a sighting there. That if you check, that one's in BFRO. There's a number of them down in BFRO that are around that area and around the mall. I've been over there. I got a friend of mine, Dave Thundercloud. He has a pretty decent photo of one he took over in uh in that area.
I think we've talked to him online before or,
Yeah,
on social media. Yeah,
yeah.
David
He
Thundercloud. Yeah, I've
he's the
seen him.
guy that was me and him were going back and forth messaging when the orb appeared in the room. First I had the rock clacking. Didn't know what to make of it. So I was like, yeah, I can't talk to you tonight. Things like that. Some people, orbs kind of go a little bit out there for some people when you talk Bigfoot.
Right
You
on.
know.
Well, Mark, we wanna thank you for being with us tonight, man. It was cool listening to your experiences and hearing your Bigfoot encounter.
Yeah, that was fun.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me. I know this you know, I tried to give you as much detail as I can. Right now I'm in my I just turned 64. And like I said, my first odd experience happened when I was 10. I just wish we had more time. I could go into detail a little bit more about all this stuff. I wanted to try to give it to you in some type of order, but it's just too numerous sometimes.
I got you.
It's hard for me to remember some of the odd stuff. But
Right?
hey, still my number one thing, I'm a skeptic. I'm still skeptical of all these things, but what happened. I can't deny it. You know what I mean? And if you need anything, I'd love to show you. Like I mentioned, I did catch an orb in a church in Pennsylvania. Only orb I ever caught. But but you
Yeah,
know, I,
you can email us that picture if you want to, if you got it. We'll put it out
yeah, I
when we
did
drop
send
this.
you my Facebook page. You're
Okay.
welcome to look at that. I have my own. Like I kind of stay away from the Facebook groups. There are a ton of them out there. It gets ridiculous. A lot of them are what's the word I'm looking for?
Trolls.
Peridoyo. That's the word. Oh, just tons of stuff. You know what I mean? It
Mhm.
seems like the more popular a Bigfoot page is, the more blurry it is. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Just people just attacking each other. I created my own group. It's called DCUSS. Just a name abbreviation for some stuff, but
but I'll I invite you guys on that. And I usually keep my stuff there.
Yeah.
I keep my personal life and my Bigfoot or paranormal life separate. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
try not to keep them both together.
Did you say that was DCUSS?
Yeah,
Okay.
DCUSS.
Okay.
I'll send you an invite. It's just a little small group I had, because I don't like a lot of these groups. I don't like contention or anything like that. I tend to, what's Barb. Barb. I mentioned Arla Williams. A lot of these older women. Barb Surf. She's the one that has, the was it. The Predator Bigfoot, the one that kind of drops to the ground. You've probably seen that footage.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Groups like people like that. I tend to lean in with that type of people. A lot of these other Bigfoot groups, what I mean, and a lot of these aper groups. What I mean, if you if you say anything other than it's Gigantopithecus, then they'll come down on you. You know what I'm saying? So
right. Well, again, Mark, we appreciate
Mark.
we appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, we do.
All right. Well, take care then.
Well, thanks for having me, folks. Good night.
Yeah, anytime, Mark.
We'll
Take
see
it
you, buddy.
easy.